I left the hospital. So I left everything. My husband, I was like, see, I need you to handle every single thing for me because I don't want to have to deal with this.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Who Do You Think You Are? My name is Elizabeth Osho. I'm the founder of SoMe Solutions, public relations firm based out of Lagos, Nigeria, Washington, D.C., and of course, England. Finally, I've started my podcast. It's a 12-part series that relates to my book, Who Do You Think You Are? And in this podcast, I'm going to be joined by amazing, fantastic, beautiful women who have got a wealth of knowledge, wealth of experience, and have faced and confronted their own traumas. The idea of this podcast is to offer a guide and to teach all of us how to face our fears, embrace our traumas, and live our best lives. So join me on the ride. So welcome to today's episode where I'm with where do I start? So Tade is a media executive, advertising executive. She's an entrepreneur, she's a wife, she's a mother, and she's the founder of Beibei Haven Infertility Charity. Tade is special and dear to me, not just because I chose her as my child's godmother, but because she's a phenomenal woman, an all-round superstar, a trooper, a woman's woman, a woman that you need in your corner. And I'm so excited today to talk to her about her infertility journey because it's something we have in common. Welcome, Tade.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Liz. I feel so honored. This is my first podcast.
It is?
It is.
Welcome.
I'm so excited.
Who else's podcast would you be on?
I know, right?
But
I'm
mine.
like, the way you even introduced me, I'm like, please, who is she talking about? Like,
you.
is it me?
It is you.
Thank you. I feel so honored, honestly.
We're going to talk about work because work plays a big part in earning the money that you need for the journey that me and you have. But I just wanted to commend you, actually. I wanted to commend you because it's not easy as a woman to navigate life, full stop. Not to talk of the added pressures for someone like me and you who had to battle infertility. And for, both of us, mine was 7 years. Yours was how many years?
Mine was about 5.
5 years. Yeah. All your children IVF.
Yes.
Which led you to start Beibei Haven, the infertility charity. Yeah. But can we go back into when you married and, what you were expecting out of life and family planning?
Okay. I think what I expected was what even caused the whole issue. I honestly thought that once you just do, that's it, done. And that was, my ideology around, fertility. And then my husband and I are hustlers. Like, I don't think anything has ever been handed to us. Everything we've worked very hard to get it. And I felt like at the point that I was, when I knew I had to do an IVF treatment, we were okay financially. I thought we were okay enough. And then all of a sudden, I have to do an IVF treatment to have kids. I was just 25 then. So I remember vividly, when they told me, I was rolling on the floor. Like, I was just like a mad person. And my husband was just looking. And I knew what was going through his mind. He's like, how on earth do we want to afford this, knowing what we're dealing with financially? And I remember telling him that, you know what, don't worry about this. I'm going to sort it out financially. I'm going to look for the money. I'm going to borrow the money and we are going to do this. Don't stress about the money. Just let's focus on having a baby. So I think that's kind of like, how the whole finance thing came to play. I would say that finding the money was pretty easy just because I'm a woman of my word. Like, when I say I'm going to do something, I do it. And I feel everybody around me already knew I had that personality. So when I had to borrow the money, I didn't even have to explain what I needed the money for. They were just like, whatever you need, however much you need, we're going to give you the money. So I feel getting the money to do the IVF treatment was pretty simple, thank God. But the roller coaster that came after that was honestly really one for the books.
I know that you've done, just like myself, I've done IVF 5 times. How many times have you done IVF?
4.
So yeah, very close. What was the reason that you were told you needed IVF? Because you married young. How old were you?
I was 25. So that aspect of it, I don't really, talk about it that much. But it, when I knew I had to do an IVF treatment, it was just a me situation. It didn't have anything to do with my husband. And I think it actually made things a bit easier for me because I just had to deal with my own head. I didn't have to deal with my husband's emotions as well as mine. I had to just, focus and just get into my head and fix my head and all of that. And, I could go ahead, with the IVF treatment. But yeah.
Can we talk about the journey of IVF? Because everyone hears it's in vitro. They're called IVF. Children that come out of IVF are called so many different things. At first, it was test tube babies.
Yes,
then it's in the petri. You remember they say test tube babies. And petri dish. But just for anyone watching this podcast that doesn't quite get it, can we say in layman's term what IVF is?
Okay, so in layman's term, as simple as I understood it, is you take the egg out of the woman's body, you take the sperm out of the woman's body, you put it together out of anybody, and when it fuses together after a couple of days, you put the embryo back into the woman's body. I think that is as simple as it goes. That's what I understood it to be.
But what is that process for somebody that's undergoing IVF? So as a woman.
Okay, so the process in terms of the IVF treatment.
Yes. What did you go through?
So what did I go through? Okay, so the process was that I first had to stimulate. So back then I did what they call the long protocol. So I had to first downregulate for a while. And then I now had to stimulate. So downregulating means they want to be in control of your body to control, the egg production. So I had to first downregulate. And then I had to start stimulating my eggs. Stimulating means it starts, medication, injections to help the eggs mature and get up to a certain size. And when it gets to that size, they then take, then the doctor then goes in and is able to take the eggs out of your body. Once he takes the eggs out, the man needs to, ejaculate and take the sperm, and then they put the sperm into the egg and then leave it. So there's the day 2, day 3, and then there's a day 5 transfer. So day 2, day 3 is the regular one. Now day 5 is a blastocyst one. So not a lot of embryos can actually make it to day 5. So they gauge the embryo, how many you produce, how many embryos you have. If you have a lot and it's of good quality, they try and make you wait it out till day 5. And then at day 5, it's called blastocyst at that stage. So I think it increases the chances of, your IVF treatment working if your embryo can actually reach day 5. So once they put it in at day 5, it's a waiting game, 2 weeks wait. A lot of, when you start researching IVF, you will hear the 2 weeks wait. It's a dreadful wait because it's telling you the verdict of the IVF treatment you just did, whether it works or it didn't work. But the thing is, the IVF treatment, I feel people don't tell you about how hard it is. You have to take injections upon injections upon injections. And I remember them giving me all my injections. I'm like, okay, this is all that you need for you to go and start injecting yourself. And I'm like, wait, who's going to inject all of this? And then, I just looked at it and I've never had injections. I didn't even know how to inject myself, And then I remember just packing everything away, and I was just told myself, you know what, it's one day at a time. So all I did was I took one injection, the one I needed for that day, and I just worried about that specific one. And I just kept going at that, and I just had the tunnel vision. This is the reason why. This is what I'm trying to get to. And I think, not looking at everything as a whole and just individually, I think it really helped me to get through the whole journey. I think emotionally as well, I feel there's a roller coaster emotionally during the whole, because your hormones are all over the place. Like one moment you're happy, the next moment you're irritated, the next moment you're sad, the next moment it's so much emotions. And the thing is, nobody really understands your emotions, so they just think probably you're a crazy person. Like, I don't understand, why is she like this? So maybe one day you're all happy with your friend, the next moment, oh, you did not call me, you know what, yeah, just go off my phone, I don't want to talk to you again. And your friend is like, wait, I don't understand, like, what did I do? I didn't do anything. So I feel like all these emotions, I think it's definitely hardest on your husband though. Like, through the whole journey, I just, always pray for every single person going through an IVF treatment. You need a supportive husband, a husband that will hold your hand. My husband did that for me. He never judged me once, every step of the way. And I think all of that helps you to get through the whole IVF treatment to your 2 weeks wait. And then after 2 weeks, you find out if you got pregnant or not.
And sometimes you didn't.
You know what's so funny? What's so funny about my IVF journey? I actually got pregnant every time. There was only once that I didn't get pregnant. But for the most part, every time I did an IVF treatment, because I there's this thing called OHSS. So my eggs, some people, they have like 10 eggs, 9 eggs. My first IVF treatment, I had about 32.
Wow.
32 eggs. So I overstimulated to the point where my stomach looked like I was probably 6 months pregnant. I had to go to the hospital. I had to get it. It was such a massive, horrible episode, the OHSS. But I did overstimulate, during my IVF journey. But, I really honestly was so grateful. I think the issue for me was really keeping the IVF treatment. And I spoke about the fact that I had to borrow money for an IVF treatment. So during the whole IVF treatment, funny enough, apart from the initial shock, I was pretty stable, in quotes, with my emotions. I was in control. I would say that I withdrew a lot, but I was in control. I won't say I was a crazy person. I think the craziness came after I got pregnant and my journey after that. But during the IVF treatment, I really was in control. There was a massive God factor. And I think that's what even really annoys me when people say, oh, you're trying to play God. And I'm like, hey, only if you know, it cannot even work without God. It can't even work. Even your emotions, the science, everything, it cannot work without God. So you need God on your journey. So, when people say that, I think I laugh, I chuckle quite a bit. Yeah.
So what was the most stressful or the most disheartening part of the journey for you? For me, it was finding the strength to do it time after time again. I remember that the IVF before my son, I had given up. I mean, you were there on the journey, so you know. And so it was finding the strength for me to just come back. I mean, the money we can make, families were around, people would support. My husband moved to America to make enough money to be able to support our IVF, but it was finding that strength. What was it for you?
So I think what through my journey of completely was, so as I said, I had to borrow money for the IVF treatment. And so I don't know, should we do TMI?
TMI, go ahead.
Yeah, so what happened was, so I got pregnant and stuff, and I was so excited. There are all of those people that, hey, look at me, I'm pregnant. In fact, I wanted a whole badge on my head that says, this woman is pregnant. Like, I wanted...
Finally.
Yes. I wanted to just walk around that because it was such an achievement. Like, I felt so blessed, and then I remember 6 weeks in, I went to a birthday party. See, in fact, that party that I went to, I remember decking up so much. Like, I dressed up. And my sister-in-law, so I found out my sister-in-law was pregnant at the same time as me. So I even wore my sunshades. I give them fully. this woman is a pregnant woman, oh, but she's looking fly. Like, I wanted that title, So that's how in the party, maybe like 10 minutes into the party, I just felt bush. I'm like, hey, what's going on? And I was 6 weeks pregnant then. And then I just quickly ran to the toilet. Hey, gush of blood. And I'm like, wait, what's going on? What's going on? Nobody told me about this part. What's going on? And I didn't know what was happening. I just knew that I was bleeding horribly. And then they called my husband, they called everybody, and we went straight to the hospital. And then they were like, okay. So at this point, I knew I was pregnant. But then what I found out that was that I was pregnant with twins. So in my head, I was just like, hey, God, is this how you move? So when we went to the hospital, when I was bleeding, the doctor then told me that everything is fine. The babies are fine. And I was like, so what's causing the bleeding? They said they don't know. Hey, I'm like, God, I beg. They don't know what. And then they were like, they can see where the bleeding is coming from, but they can't stop it. And I'm like, ha. So literally, they now gave me injections and they gave me stuff and they told me to go home. And from that moment, my pregnancy really took another turn. It took a turn of pain. It took a turn of, I was bleeding every single day. I remember my mom called me and she was like, Omotade, this is not our pregnancy. So I was like, Mommy, what do you know? You had 4 children back to back. What do you even know about trials in this area? Mommy, just leave it. And I was like, I am going to carry these babies to term. Like, I was determined to carry my babies to term. And then so after that whole scenario, after that whole situation, so I remember going to the hospital and I was like, you know what, I want to experience every single thing that any woman that is pregnant experiences. I want to do antenatal now. At what, 7 weeks pregnant?
And they're like, what?
I was like, I want to do everything. And then they were like, oh, yeah, early. Yeah, early. And I'm like, no, there's something I can do now. And they were like, okay, you can do blood tests. You and your husband come in and just do blood tests, till then. So
blood
like,
test
okay.
For what? Any blood test?
Only blood test. And me, I was even like, I really want to do something. And then that was what kind of like threw me off. So I didn't see what was coming after that. So when I went in and I did my blood test, my husband did my blood test, then my gynecologist just called me and the gynecologist was like, oh, please, you both need to come in, because I have something to tell both of you. And I'm like, I don't understand. Like, do you know what I've been through? That, you know what, yeah, it's fine. Whatever you want to tell me is okay. So then we both went in. And then the first thing my doctor said was, do you know your genotype? And I'm like, yeah, like I'm AS, my husband is AA. And he was not like, but who told you that? And I'm like, me, I always knew I was AS. So, and I insisted on my husband doing it. But anyways, so he basically said that, and my husband assumed that he was AA. So there was a lot of assumption around it. And then he now basically told me that your husband is AS and you're AS.
Wow.
Hey, God. I was mad. I wanted to deal with my...
Which means the likelihood of you having an SS child is like...
Yeah, so
there.
The chances of having an SS child is there. When both of you are AS. And I mean, I was pregnant with twins. So the chances was even more of having an SS child. And I was so angry. I was so confused. I felt all kinds of emotions. But then I just looked at my husband and I'm like, this man has been so supportive every step of the way. So it was almost like I had to micromanage so much of how I was feeling at that point in time. So I just put the move forward. So they move forward. So then the moving forward stage was, my doctor was like, okay, there's a way you can check the genotype of your baby, your baby's early, but we don't do it here. So you have to go to London to do it. And it's called CVS. I'm like, okay. So I booked the next flight out.
More money.
Yeah, more, but NHS was going to pay for it, so I didn't have
the flights are money.
Yeah, God bless you. The flight was money. Everything was money, and even just living in England was money. So I think I'm going to kind of like go through everything as quick as I can because my journey is, pretty long. But anyway, so I went to London. At this point, I was still bleeding every day. So when I got to the hospital, so long story short, I did the CVS, and they told me that. So first, days before, like maybe like a week before, they were like, oh, so my hospital called me and they were like, oh, we know the genders of your babies. I'm like, oh, please tell me
already.
Yeah, so early. And they were like, they were like, oh, you're having a girl and a boy. So I was like, oh my days, like stop, like
lottery.
I was so happy, and then I remember 4 days later, I was inside the shopping center, and then the lady from the hospital called me, and she was like, oh, where are you? I was like, I'm in the shopping center. She was like, I think you need to go somewhere private. And I'm like, for what? Like, just tell me, just lay it on me. I want to know. And she was like, okay, so the boy is AS, but the girl is SS. And the thing was, I didn't even research on like I didn't even think about the chances of anything, and that I wouldn't really go into how I even came to terms with it, and the kind of advice I got and everything. But the long story short was, I came to the conclusion that I am going to keep the baby, because they give you all the options in the UK. So I decided I'm going to keep my babies and all of that. So I was still bleeding every day. Now fast forward to when I was about 5 months gone, and I was still in England. They didn't even want me to leave because I was bleeding every day. So there was one day I just literally just passed out on the floor from bleeding, and then my friend called the ambulance to come and take me. And then I just remembered being on the hospital bed, and the doctor just came to me. I was like, you have 3 options right now, because you've lost way too much blood. You have 3 options right now. You can that if you keep on bleeding at this rate, you can you would either lose the pregnancy, lose your whole womb altogether, or you would die. And I'm like, see, you don't understand the journey that I've been through. None of these are my options. So what do you need to do right now for me? Because I am carrying my babies to term. They were like, okay, we need to do blood transfusions for you right now, just to be able to get, but this is what is going to happen. And I'm like, these are not my portions. Anyways, so fast forward a couple of days after that, I remember I was just like, I was in pain. Almost every day I was in pain, but you can see I'm not even talking about it because I was so excited I was pregnant. So I didn't feel the pain, but I was in intense pain almost every day. And then now they kept me in the hospital. They were like, you're not leaving the hospital. So I was now living in the hospital. And then I remember one day my mom came to me and she was like, and I was now in some next level pain. And the thing is, a lot of people actually don't talk about, having like the different types of miscarriages. So I was in another mind-blowing type of pain at 5 months. So I was just like, I was screaming, I was shouting. And then, but I was like, I can handle it. So it will be so much, and then it will now disappear. Then it will be so much, and then it will now disappear. And then my mom was like, something is wrong. You people need to come. And this was at night. This was like 4 p.m. at night, and 4 a.m. in the morning, actually. And then they now just came, and they were now like, you're in labor. I'm like, wait, what? Labor at 5 months ago. I'd never, ever heard about, any of that. And they were like, in labor and your babies are coming out now. So my craziness was to the point where
you thought,
once they told me that, I started telling myself, Tade, you're going to erase everything that is just happening from your mind. You're going to erase this whole pregnancy from your mind. They're not going to make it, and you have to erase this thing from your mind, because you cannot live past this if you don't erase this thing from your mind. So that was what, and that's this whole journey.
Did you push them out?
So that's when they told me. But then I was not in labor. So many people just came round, and I was just in pain. I basically pushed the first one out. I pushed the second one out. They didn't make it. My husband was there. I remember them asking me, what should we do? Do you want to cremate? Do you want to... Like, I was just so like, when somebody is in such a haze, like I was in such a haze, and I was so numb. Like, they were like, do you want to see your babies? I was like, I don't want to see them. Because I knew that if I saw my babies, that it would.
Sorry,
I
Tade.
knew that if I saw them, it was going to make it real. And I didn't want it to be real. So I had to act like it wasn't happening. And so I left the hospital. I left everything. My husband, I was like, see, I need you to handle every single thing for me because I don't want to have to deal with this. And I feel like that is what took me into such a dark place. I was in such a dark place. Like, you can't actually deal with a loss like that and act like everything was okay, and that's what I was doing. Until one day, I remember calling my sister and I'm like, I want to die.
Wow.
Like, I cannot live anymore. Like, because you can't see brushing your teeth and just getting out of bed. It's automatic. It's almost like
it's like a weight. It's like a log.
Like, you cannot do anything. You cannot.
You feel like a failure.
You feel like a failure. Everything I saw, I wanted to just smash it. I wanted to break everything. I would just be looking by myself on the floor. And I remember that was the first time I ever brought God into the mix. And I was like, Father Lord, this was about 3 months pregnant, 3 months post. And I just remember sitting on the floor and I'm like, Father Lord, I can't do this. I can't actually get through this by myself. I don't know what to do. I can't. Help me take this pain away. It's too much for me to bear. I remember saying it. And literally that began my road to recovery. I was pregnant at the same time as my sister-in-law. So I dealt with a lot. I couldn't be around pregnancies that reminded me of how far gone I could have been. I couldn't look at any stroller. I couldn't look at anything because I'm like, this is a reminder. I was in the space where I didn't want it to even register. So I was just in a space of just constantly running. And you know what? Yeah, that took me on my road to recovery, and so many amazing people that I met on my road to recovery. But the first thing was acceptance. I needed to accept what I went through properly before I could move on.
And that's what the book talks about. I wrote this book, Who Do You Think You Are? Because we all go through pain. We all go through trauma. I dare anyone to say their life has been perfect. Even the richest people, because it's not about money or how much money you have. And I wrote this book because I wanted a situation where we could have this open and honest dialogues about the pain that we've been through and what our journey to healing was. And I'm so thankful that you are being so vulnerable today and you're sharing your story, because we share our stories so that somebody else has hope and so that somebody else who's 25, just like you were, and may have been given the same sort of diagnosis, is able to see that you have how many children now?
I have 3 children now.
Did your twin boy and girl come back? They sure did.
They
Beautiful
did.
Dara
They
and
did.
Dayo
They
and
did.
Goke,
They
and God
did.
bless you. He
They
gave
did.
you, he just gave you so many flowers for your ashes, and I'm proud of you. And I'm sorry that I'm gonna have to take you back.
No problem. No problem.
What was it like, the family? So I know that, that you couldn't be around pregnant people, unlike me, who I was like, let me be around pregnant people. That's why God will bless me. They're gonna rub off on me. So I wanted to be around everybody who had a baby during my journey, which was 7 years. And I was more advanced than you because I was 32 when I started my journey. I didn't go on to have a baby until 7 years later, 2 years away from 40. But what was it like for your family, your in-laws, your own parents? What was navigating those relationships? Because I'm sure people were expectant.
I would say that my family was very supportive. A lot of my journey had to do with me being extremely confused. I would not say I was the best of people during my journey, and I think that's why I really take it upon myself to really uplift other people that are on the journey, the right healthy way of dealing with all the emotions, all the trauma you must be facing. Because I definitely wouldn't say I was the best. Everybody annoyed me, everybody upset me, because come on, when you're dealing with a bruised person, you can't really get life from that. You can't get, positive. You can't get respect. You can't. My mom, I'm like, I don't want to talk to you. Please, can you go off my mom? Hey, God. Like, even thinking about it, I'm like, wait, you have my though. Like, I was just, everybody was just tiptoeing around me, and I knew they were tiptoeing around me. At that point, I honestly didn't even really care about what, anybody was feeling or thinking, because I was on my own journey of healing, but when I truly started healing, that was the moments that everything just started falling into place. I feel like my husband suffered the most out of everybody, but I remember him breaking down one day to me, and then he just said, Tade, I lost too. I'm feeling this too. And I think at that moment I was just like, oh my God, he's actually grieving. He's actually going through this with me. And I think that was when I was like, you know what, I need to actually change. I need to be better. I need to be better for my husband. I need to be better for myself. I need to work on myself to be a better version for when I do have children. I used to say affirmations every day. I am going to have my babies. I am going to have my I don't know whether this treatment will work, but I am going to have my babies in the end. Yeah.
So how was it like showing up to life, balancing work as well? Because your husband owns an advertising agency. You worked in that advertising agency. What was it like showing up?
So I felt like I didn't really have a choice when it came to work and showing up, just because. So, all these things happened to me. And in the midst of everything, remember, I had to borrow the money for the IVF treatment. I think that was what the most messed up.
So whether you like it or not, you must enter that work.
And I am a person of my word. I will never, ever default, no matter what. Meaning, so I will be sad. Once I have to see my client, boom, I become this
a different person.
I had to morph into this person just to be productive, because we needed money. We needed to make a living. We needed to pay back. You see, I didn't even care about any other thing. You see, that whole, when I say I'm going to give you back your money, I am going to give you back your money. That was what was powering me. But
how much had you borrowed? Or how much did you spend in your IVF?
Okay, so the first IVF treatment, this was about 11 years ago. Oh my God, I'm so old. 11 years ago. So an IVF treatment then was about 1.5 million. So we had to pay back 1.5. It's not 1.5 of today. But we had to pay 1.5 million, meaning that, and that was big money. I mean, that was my rent for 2 years. That 1.5 million. So we had to work, and I didn't need my husband to tell me we needed to work. I am a bulldozer. I love work, so I really, really, really put in my hardest to pay back when I said I was gonna pay back. And I'm honestly so grateful to God that I could actually put the money together and pay back without having to give any excuse. Because I could easily have gone to the person and was like, I just went through an IVF treatment, happened to me, this, that. But I'm not that type of person. I'm not going to give you stories. I'm not going to give you any of that. I just need you to just trust me that when I say I will pay you back, I will pay you back. Your second question was,
how much did you spend in all?
Yeah, so
because I think money is something that, people don't actually understand. We say IVF is expensive, but let's put it into context.
So altogether, we spent about 11 point something million naira then, which if we wanted to buy like a 3-bed, that would be half of it back then. So it was like half of an apartment. That was, how much we spent.
So for me, who was going now transatlantic, living in America and coming back, so flights, when I was here, I no longer lived in Nigeria, so I would have to pay for accommodation, hotels, the rest of it. I think when I did the calculation, I was trying. It's probably, I can probably not remember every single line item, but we had spent at least 60 million
on
this.
Wow.
So it's no easy feat. And for me as well, this is obviously 6-7 years ago now. I have a child that's almost 2. So 60 million, when you think about it, then a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. And come on, we were 20 what? Hey, dealing with that kind of money. Even our rent then was 600,000 naira. To find our rent money was a problem. Talk less of that magnitude of money. You know, it's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of, I feel it aged my marriage, to be honest. I feel it added like, about 6-7 years to
you
my
didn't
marriage.
Get to just be careless, young,
I know.
free.
What? Careless and what? Hey, we were matured. In fact, we're probably 10 years into marriage when we were maybe like 2-3 years into marriage. Yeah, IVF, I would say, would age any marriage. Really.
I second that. So for anybody watching, listening to this and thinking, you know, what would I do if I found myself in this position, or they currently find themselves in this position, what advice will you give?
I think on my journey, one hard thing that I learned is happiness is not necessarily something that just falls on you. I learned that you have to actually seek happiness. You need to want happiness for happiness to find you. And I had to learn that on my journey that I was not happy. So there were a lot of things that I did, to be honest with you, to get to the stage of peace, acceptance, you know, and I had to find happiness. I had to accept what I was going through. I had to stop comparing myself to other people that they thought you small and you're pregnant and all that. I had to stop all of that and just accept what you're going through. Seek the necessary information. Going to the hospital does not mean you don't trust God. It just means that you trust God, but you're also trying to, you know, seek medical attention just in case there are underlying issues, which majority of the time there are a lot of that you might be dealing with underlying issues. So I feel like it's a dance between your faith and science. So just get the knowledge that you need and then use that to make the necessary decisions that you need on your fertility journey. And love yourself. You're not a failure. You didn't do something, you know, that is making you go through this. I personally feel like God chose you to go through this so you can be there for somebody else that is going through it. So you just have to be strong. You will have your children. Whatever your heart desires is what you will get at the end of the day. But just go through the journey and don't lose faith.
That's beautiful. Thank you for being a rock to me. You have been my rock. I made you and chose you as my son's godmother just because of how much you stood in the gap for me. I know that my final IVF, I had given up. I did not want to go through this process anymore. I almost said it's okay if I never have a child, but you encouraged me. You physically came. Do you remember it was raining and Lekki was flooded? You just got your new car, your Jeep, for your 10-year anniversary, but you came in the rain. I can never forget. With rain was almost entering into the car, into the Jeep, and we swapped. You came and met me right by Norway's house, and I jumped into the car. You were with Tutu, and we drove. I will never forget. I know my journey too, you know, and we drove to the clinic. And I waited in the car while you guys went to tell the doctor. I know she has said you guys don't know what you're doing. She doesn't want to work with you guys. She had left. I had left to another clinic and had a failed cycle. But, you know, you helped reconcile things and even asked for a discount. On top, I said, please, you give her discount. No, Dr. Emeka, you give her discount, you know. So I think I want to finish with this. You've been supporting so many women today. And Beibei Haven Infertility Charity has been, you know, one of the biggest advocates for this disease called infertility. If someone's listening and want to support that charity, how do they go about it?
So you can go on our website, www.beibeihaven.org, and then you could donate there. You could reach out. You can we're also active on Instagram. You could send us a DM on Instagram. You can send us an email, beibeihaven@gmail.com. You can just reach out whichever way, and we'll try our hardest to give you the necessary support needed.
Thank you. If there's anything that I took out of this, a lot was said, is just, it is not your fault. Because I think society can sometimes make it feel like it's the woman's fault. No one even ever looks at the man. It's always, what have you done in your past? Did you have an abortion? I remember someone saying, Liz, there must have been something you did to make Liz not say she never do abortion. I've been waiting. Why she no have Pekin? Something along those lines. And these things, they hurt to the core, they hurt to the bone. So I think one of the things you've said today that I will hold, and that I want to remind everyone viewing or listening to this, is that it is not your fault. You are not a failure. You are loved, and as long as there's life, there's the opportunity to try again.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for being vulnerable.
Thank you.
And I love you. I love you.
I love you too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys, wasn't that session packed? It was awesome. And I'm so grateful for Tade for being so vulnerable, for sharing. And I hope that you are inspired from this episode. There's more to come, so please stay tuned.